Honey, guess what? Salt-N-Pepa are speaking out. Yes, and they are talking about Clive Davis. It seems like since Clive Davis has passed away, a lot of people are really speaking out and they feel more free to tell their story. I came across this video, so let's react. I know you guys love to do reaction videos. I enjoy entertaining you guys. So make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe here. And let's see what's really going on. They're saying that Clive Davis, he pretty much stole so much from so many black artists. You know, he opened the doors for them to get their fame, but at the same time, he was taking a lot of money from them, you know. So let's hear what she has to say about it all.
We was just some roundaway girls doing our thing, being authentic, being real, being relatable to a lot of women and men. And that was a huge part of our success, as well as timeless music.
At 59 years old, Cheryl "Salt" James revealed the dark truth about Salt-N-Pepa and what Clive Davis and the industry built around them. You know the songs. You probably danced to every single one. But what you don't know, what the biopics skipped and the nostalgia tours never mentioned, is who actually owned the music, who kept the money, and what it cost the women who made it all possible.
Generally speaking, when you just grow up, you just get to a point where things will not be tolerated, and respect should be mutual. And when respect is mutual,
Two girls from Queens walked into a Sears break room, picked up a microphone on a dare, and accidentally built the most important female rap group in history. They went platinum when the industry said women couldn't rap. They won Grammys when nobody was giving them to hip-hop. They sold 15 million records and changed what a woman was allowed to say on a stage. And 40 years later, they don't own a single song. Not one. When these women finally stood on a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame stage and said the names out loud. Nobody's told you this version. Not the interviews, not the biopic, not the podcasts. This is the story of Salt-N-Pepa and the empire they built but were never allowed to keep.
To me, it was just a story about two friends that was together before we were business partners, before we were Salt-N-Pepa, and all the ups and downs of what that looks like.
Cheryl James wasn't trying to be a rapper. Neither was Sandra Denton. In 1985, they were two college students at Queensborough Community College in Queens, New York, working part-time at Sears to pay for textbooks and bus fare. James was born December 28, 1966, in Brooklyn, raised in Queens, quiet, smart, the kind of girl who observed a room before she entered it. Denton was born November 9, 1966, in Kingston, Jamaica. Moved to Queens as a child, loud where Cheryl was soft, bold where Cheryl was cautious. They met on the job, became friends the way coworkers do when the shifts are long and the pay is short. Cheryl was studying nursing. Sandra was studying business. Neither of them had rap on the syllabus. The rap thing started as a dare. Herbie Lovebug Azor, Cheryl's boyfriend and a student at the Center for Media Arts, needed someone to rap on a track for a class project. He'd written a response record to Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick's The Show and needed two female voices. He asked Cheryl. Cheryl asked Sandra. Neither of them had ever rapped before. They recorded The Showstopper under the name Supernature, and the track started getting play on local New York radio before the semester was over. That was the beginning, not of a career, of a contract. Eddie O'Loughlin at Next Plateau Records heard the buzz and signed them. The name changed to Salt-N-Pepa. A DJ named LaToya Hanson was brought in, then replaced by Dee Dee Spinderella Roper, a teenager from Brooklyn who could scratch and hold a crowd. 3 women, 3 boroughs, 1 microphone. And behind all of it, 1 man pulling every string. Herbie Azor wasn't just Salt's boyfriend. He was the producer, the songwriter, at least on paper, and the manager. Every track on their debut album, Hot, Cool, and Vicious, released in 1986, ran through his production company, Nita Productions. His name appeared on the songwriting credits. His company held the production deal with Next Plateau. Before Salt-N-Pepa had sold a single record, the ownership structure was already built, and it was built around Herbie Azor, not the women on the microphone. Hot, Cool, and Vicious became the first album by a female rap group to be certified gold, then platinum. Over 1 million copies sold, and the two women who made it happen, the ones whose voices and faces and energy moved those units, didn't hold the pen on a single contract that mattered. They were 20 years old, thrilled to be on the radio, grateful to have a deal, and Herbie's name was already on every page of every document that would determine where the money went for the next 40 years. Push It was never supposed to be the single. It was a B-side, filler on the back of Tramp. The track Next Plateau was actually pushing, but DJs in clubs across the country started flipping the record and playing the other side. The beat hit different. The energy was undeniable. And before the label could catch up, Push It was everywhere. By 1988, the song had climbed to number 19 on the Billboard Hot 100. The first song by a female rap act to crack the top 20, not just in hip-hop, on the entire Hot 100. And Salt-N-Pepa weren't asking for permission. They were demanding attention in a genre that hadn't made room for women at the table, let alone at the head of it. Then came the Grammys. The Recording Academy had never nominated a rap song before. Push It was the very first rap nomination in Grammy history. And when Salt-N-Pepa performed at the 1989 ceremony, they became the first rap act to ever take that stage. The audience didn't fully know what to do. Salt-N-Pepa didn't care. They commanded the room the way they always did, with volume, with presence, with the certainty that they belonged there. It was 1989. Run DMC had crossed over. LL Cool J had magazine covers. But nobody had seen two women do what Salt-N-Pepa did on that Grammy stage: rap with authority, perform with precision, and leave a room full of rock legends wondering what just happened. Assault with a Deadly Peppa dropped in 1988 and went gold. Then came Black's Magic in 1990. Expression reached number 28 on the Hot 100, and Let's Talk About landed at number 12. That song did more than chart. It shifted the conversation. Two women rapping openly about desire and autonomy in an era when female artists were expected to be either silent or sanctified. The AIDS remix, Let's Talk About AIDS, became a public health tool distributed in schools and clinics across the country. Salt-N-Pepa weren't just making music anymore. They were making permission. Permission for women to talk about their bodies, their desires, their health, in a genre that had never asked for their opinion. 3 albums, multiple chart hits, a Grammy nomination, a Grammy stage, and through every achievement, one name on every credit, every contract, every royalty statement: Herbie Azor. He produced the records, he managed the tours, he was credited as songwriter on virtually every track, and he was still dating Salt. The conflicts of interest were stacked 3 deep: creative, financial, and personal, and nobody had the leverage to untangle them. The more Salt-N-Pepa succeeded, the tighter his grip became. His production company, Nita Productions, was the entity that held the deal with Next Plateau. Every dollar flowed through his structure first. They were winning everything, except the one thing that would matter most when the music stopped, and it would take them another decade to realize what they'd already lost. October 12th, 1993. Salt-N-Pepa release, very necessary. And for the first time in their career, the music sounds like it belongs to them. The difference was in the credits. Salt-N-Pepa weren't just performing. They were writing their own lyrics, co-producing tracks, making decisions about sequencing and singles. Herbie Azor's grip had loosened. Not entirely, His name still appeared, and the business structure hadn't changed. But in the studio, something had shifted. These weren't two girls from Sears anymore. They were women who had spent 7 years watching someone else take credit for their instincts. And they'd had enough. Shoop hit number 4 on the Hot 100, laid back, flirtatious, and entirely on their terms. What a Man, featuring on Vogue, climbed to number 3. 4 women celebrating men without a male producer dictating the temperature. None of Your Business landed at number 32 and became the anthem of female autonomy in 90s hip-hop. The video had Salt-N-Pepa dressed as judges, lawyers, and jurors, literally putting themselves in the positions of power that the industry had never offered them. The message was the same one they'd been sending since 1986, only now it came with 5 million copies of proof. Very Necessary went 5 times platinum. 5 million copies. And in 1995, None of Your Business won the Grammy for Best Rap Performance by a duo or group, making Salt-N-Pepa the first female rappers to win a Grammy. Not nominated, not honored. Winners. But the album that proved they could create without Azor was still contractually tied to him. Nita Productions still held the production deal. The money still routed through his entity. The songwriting credits on the earlier albums still carried his name. They'd won the creative war. The business war was already lost before they knew it was being fought, signed away in 1986 when they were 20 years old and grateful just to be in the room. 5 times platinum, a Grammy on the shelf, and not a single master in their name. Brand New dropped in 1997 and landed with a thud. Number 63 on the R&B albums chart, barely a ripple. The mid-90s had shifted. Lil' Kim was rewriting the rules. Missy Elliott was about to reinvent the production game. And the polished, pop-accessible lane Salt-N-Pepa had pioneered was being edged out by something harder and more provocative. The group that opened the door was watching the next generation walk through it without looking back. Brand New sold a fraction of what Very Necessary had moved. The label didn't renew. The phone stopped ringing, and just like that, the most successful female rap group in history was without a recording home. But the album's failure was the least of what was breaking. Cheryl James was falling apart. She'd been bulimic for years, hiding it behind the costumes, the choreography, the public image of a woman who had everything together. The depression came with it, slow and heavy. She said it plainly in interviews. She hated what she saw in the mirror. The woman who'd stood on Grammy stages couldn't stand to look at herself. Sandra Denton's pain was different, but no less consuming. She married Anthony Tretch Chris, the rapper from Naughty by Nature, in the late 90s. What the public saw was a power couple. What Pepa documented in her 2008 memoir, Let's Talk About Pep, was domestic abuse, behind closed doors while the rest of the world applauded her husband on stage. The marriage lasted roughly 2 years before the divorce was finalized around 2001. Tretch denied the allegations publicly. Pepa's account has remained consistent across multiple interviews and her own book. She wrote about the bruises, the fear, the double life of being one of hip-hop's most confident women on stage and one of its most silenced in private. And buried deeper, revealed in that same memoir, was the fact that Pepa had been molested as a child. The woman the world saw rapping about sexual freedom had been robbed of her own before she was old enough to understand what was taken. By 1999, Salt had married Gavin Ray and become a born-again Christian. She stepped away from music entirely. She didn't want to perform. She didn't want to record. She didn't want to be Salt anymore. She later said she found peace in her faith, that Christianity gave her the thing the industry never could, which was the ability to exist without performing. Salt divorced Gavin Ray in 2010, but the faith stayed. It was the only thing that held through the decade. Meanwhile, the industry kept turning. Names like Clive Davis floated through the rooms where careers were built and dismantled. The rooms where masters changed hands and catalogs were traded like commodities. Rooms that Salt-N-Pepa were rarely invited into once the hits stopped coming. The music stopped. The contracts didn't. And while Salt was praying and Peppa was healing, the masters were quietly changing hands, moving further from the women who made them with every corporate merger. For 30 years, Dee Dee Spinderella Roper stood on that stage. She was there before the first album went gold. She was there when Push It broke the Hot 100. She was there when Very Necessary went 5 times platinum and they won the Grammy. 3 decades, thousands of shows, and in January 2019, she found out she'd been fired. Spinderella has said publicly that the decision blindsided her, that after more than 30 years as a founding pillar of the group, she was cut loose without the kind of closure that 3 decades of partnership should demand. 30 years of shows, of scratching records on stages from New York to Tokyo, of being the third leg of a group that changed music history, ended without a conversation. Then the lawsuit came. Over $600,000 in unpaid royalties spanning more than a decade. Fraud, trademark infringement, unjust enrichment. The woman who had stood on every stage and appeared in every video alleged she'd been systematically underpaid for years, that the money from the shows, the appearances, the licensing deals had been divided in ways that left her with a fraction of what the name Salt-N-Pepa generated. The VH1 reality show had aired in 2007 and 2008, framing the reunion as a feel-good comeback. The Lifetime biopic in 2021 portrayed them as a unified front. But behind the cameras, according to Spinderella's filing, the financial fractures had been growing for years. The public narrative was sisterhood. The private reality was exclusion. And here's the part that sits heaviest. Salt-N-Pepa had spent their career fighting against exploitation, against Azor's control, against the label structures that funneled their money through other people's companies. They knew what it felt like to be on the wrong end of a contract. The lawsuit alleged that the same pattern had been replicated within their own group. The DJ who had been there from the beginning claimed she'd been treated the way the industry had treated all of them. By 2023, Salt-N-Pepa had launched a Las Vegas residency at Planet Hollywood, touring income as the primary revenue, separate from the masters' disputes. They were still performing, still Salt-N-Pepa, but the triangle had become a line, and the third woman was standing on the other side of a courtroom. To understand how Salt-N-Pepa lost their masters, you have to follow the chain. When they signed with Next Plateau Records, the deal was structured through Azor's company. Nita Productions held the production agreement. The recordings, the actual master tapes, belonged to the entity that held the production deal. Not to Salt, not to Peppa, to Nita Productions. From there, the chain moved. Next Plateau's catalog was acquired by London Records. London was absorbed into Polygram. Polygram was swallowed by Universal Music Group in 1998. And when UMG consumed Polygram, it consumed everything down the line, including everything Nita Productions had produced. 5 corporate transactions, none involving Salt, Peppa, or Spinderella. Nobody called, nobody needed to, because legally, the women on the microphone had never owned the recordings. The works for hire designation meant the music was corporate property from the moment it was recorded. The artists were labor. The product belonged to the company. This is the machinery that built the modern music industry. Not just for Salt-N-Pepa, for generations of black artists whose catalogs were absorbed through mergers and contractual structures designed to separate the creator from the creation. The system didn't need a villain. It just needed paperwork. And the paperwork was airtight. By the time Salt-N-Pepa understood what had happened, by the time they traced the chain from Herbie's production company to a multinational corporation, the distance between them and their own music was measured in decades and billions of dollars. Their songs were still playing. Their masters were sitting in a UMG vault. And the royalties from every stream, every sync license, every commercial placement flowed to an entity that had never heard Cheryl James or Sandra Denton sing a single note. The chain was complete, every link forged by someone else's hand, and the only thing left for Salt-N-Pepa to do was what they'd been doing since 1985: fight. In May 2025, Salt-N-Pepa filed a lawsuit against Universal Music Group. The claim was direct. UMG was profiting from recordings Salt-N-Pepa had created through a chain of ownership the artists had never consented to. They wanted their masters back. The lawsuit landed in headlines. Two women in their late 50s taking on one of the largest music corporations on the planet. The same women who'd gone platinum when the industry said they couldn't. The audacity was familiar. The same energy that had put them on that Grammy stage in 1989. Then came November 2025. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Salt-N-Pepa were finally given the honor the music had earned decades earlier. The speeches were supposed to be celebrations, gratitude, nostalgia, a night of applause and thank yous and carefully worded reflections on a career well lived. Salt took the microphone and turned it into something else entirely. She named Universal Music Group, on stage, on camera, in front of the industry. She said it plainly, that the company sitting on their masters had no right to them, that the music had been taken through a chain of deals none of them had signed, and that the fight wasn't over. This wasn't a thank you speech. It was an indictment delivered from the highest stage the music industry has to offer. The room shifted. The applause had a different texture, not just celebration, but recognition. Two women who had spent 4 decades being exploited, underestimated, and contractually erased were using the single biggest moment of institutional validation to call the institution out by name. During the dispute, Salt-N-Pepa's music was pulled from major streaming platforms. The songs that had gone platinum and won Grammys became unavailable to new listeners. Try searching for Push It on Spotify. Try finding Shoop on Apple Music. The catalog that shaped an entire generation of female empowerment in hip-hop disappeared from the digital shelves while the legal battle played out. They stood on the biggest stage of their lives and said the name out loud. And 2 months later, the court said it didn't matter. January 2026. A judge dismissed the lawsuit. The ruling was clinical. The recordings were works for hire, created under Azor's production deal. The chain, Nita Productions to Next Plateau to London, Records to Polygram to UMG, was legally sound. Salt-N-Pepa had never signed with UMG. They didn't need to. The chain bypassed them entirely. In February 2026, they filed an appeal. The fight that started in a Sears break room in 1985 was still going, 41 years later in a federal courtroom, against a corporation worth billions. So let's do the math on what Cheryl James and Sandra Denton built in 40 years. First female rap group to go gold. First to go platinum. First rap nomination in Grammy history. First rap performance on the Grammy stage. First female rappers to win a Grammy. Over 15 million records sold. 5 times platinum on a single album. Push It, Shoop, What a Man. Let's Talk About Sex. None of Your Business. Songs that soundtracked a generation and gave permission to every female MC who came after them. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees, class of 2025. And 0 masters in their name. The music is off streaming. The catalog sits in a UMG vault, unavailable to the listeners who might discover it. The royalties from every stream, every sync license, every commercial placement went to a corporation that never heard Salt or Peppa rap a single bar. Salt is 59. Peppa is 59. They're still performing in Las Vegas, still touring, still drawing crowds that know every word to songs the streaming platforms won't play. The money comes from the stage now. From the voices, the presence, the energy that no contract can own. The industry took the masters. It couldn't take the show. They walked into a Sears break room in 1985 with nothing but a dare and a beat. 40 years later, they still don't own the songs. But they own something the contracts can never touch. The truth about who built it, who took it, and who's still fighting to get it back.